Hi Witchlings, welcome back to my channel. It is Chaotic Witch on here, and today I'm going to be talking about mistakes I made in my craft and as beginner witch. What you don't know is this is actually the second time filming this because it quit and erased the video the first time. Alright, so these are mistakes that since making them I have grown, I have changed or rectified them. And, you know, looking back on them, I was like kind of stupid baby. To start, the first thing that I did wrong in my eyes, I didn't do protection well. I didn't do a lot of protection at all. I looked up a protective method on Pinterest and did that, which is like, it's not the best method. Like, there are all good things that Pinterest is good for, you know, there are, but getting a full protective warding thing, not great. Okay, so to start, didn't do a lot of protection, and then I started deity work 6 months in. The reason I started deity work is because I was very convinced that someone was reaching out to me. To be clear, Kronos did reach out to me, and that I got like solid confirmation again and again and again. And he's still here. He's been here since the beginning of my journey. Yeah, I had like a good relationship with my cat. And I was like, oh, it's Bastet. It was probably Freya. Like, Freya's my patroness. She was probably hanging around, saw me think it was Bastet, and then left. But so I misinterpreted all of these signs, and like there are crows around my house, like because I live in an area where a bunch of crows live, and I'd be walking and there'd be a flock of crows just there, and I'd be like, oh, it's a sign. And I'm like, looking back at it, I'm like, You know what's a sign now? A dead bird in my yard. 3 crows following me home. Like those are very specific. And I did I thought Bastet was reaching out to me, and I tried to talk to her. And I'm sure that it was Freya, and I thought it was Bastet, but what ended up happening is I ended up like just with a spirit in my house. I was very unprepared for that. Well, because I don't think that you get tricksters or fake deities often. I think that what happens is you go into something working with an entity with no protection, and then what happens from there is more spirits can just kind of come in, because there's like almost like a magnetic force, in my opinion. Like, my house is very spiritually active. I'm very used to having spirits around me at any given time, but it didn't always be like that. It wasn't always like that. I do, however, have things follow me around. And my mom noticed that too. She's like, when you leave, they leave, and then when you come back, they come back. That's mostly just because I see myself as a magnet of sorts. Yeah, so I started deity work without protection. I ended up with a spirit in my house for like years. After I left for college, my parents would hear it walking around in my room. Since then, it has left. I don't think it was baneful. I don't think it was malevolent. It was just chilling. The other thing I did is I casted a curse on someone with like 6 months experience. And when I say curse, I mean like curse. It wasn't that bad. It was like a lemon curse, like very basic cursing technique. But I did it. I hung it outside my window to be exposed to the elements, because that's what it was supposed to do. And it fell off my window, this window right here, and rolled into the gutter. We had an active curse in our gutter of this house for 5 years. Yeah, that was not my proudest moment. 5 years later, we got it out, burned it. Or it was 5 years? It was 6. It's in 6 years now. Oh, it was 5 years there. It was in there for 4 or 5 years. I don't know the exact number. So that was a thing that I did. Like I said, not my proudest moment. What are some other mistakes I made? Oh, using white sage was one, because at the time, no one was talking about cultural appropriation, and I had it. I've stopped using it, though. I get my sage free bundles, like free of white sage, from Crystal Girl always, and I love them. I also use cedar and rosemary a lot, and I got my rosemary bundle from Crystal and Craft. I'll link both of them down below. Editing Frankie, if you could please do that, because you keep saying you're gonna link things and forgetting. I see you. What else? I feel like, what are mistakes I've made recently? Oh my god, I once opened a bag that's like a spell bag that someone gave me. Like, you would think if you get the bag, you're not going to open. No, I opened it, and it was very stupid of me. That was a mistake. Never open things you find. My biggest defining ones were the deity work without protection and the curse. Those are the biggest ones. There's not much to this. It really was all up from there. It was really all up from there. Another mistake I made, I think, was labeling my practice right away. I felt like it didn't give me much room to grow. You know, I felt like I do a lot, I learn from a lot, and my practice pulls from a lot of different places, mostly like folk magic, but I think I didn't give myself enough space to learn as a witch. I felt like I needed to get a bunch of materials right away. I didn't really need any materials, but it's one of those things where you feel like you have to get a bunch of like herbs and crystals to be a witch. Capitalism. But you don't need a lot of materials starting off, but I like bought a bunch. And because of that, I now have like a hoard of materials. I never need to buy herbs again. I didn't slow down. I think I could have focused on like 3 to 5 things in my practice and I would have been good, but I've tried to do a lot all at once, as you can tell from deity work. I think I relied on my practice a lot to solve problems for me, which I don't think is the right way to go. I think that learning and being a witch is more learning about what you can't control than what you can control. A few other mistakes. I feel like I just could have done more research before hopping into things, specifically deity work, but like cursing someone, could have done more research before doing that. I feel like there was this pressure that I put on myself to do a bunch right away, and I don't think I needed to do that. Am I like grateful for where I am now and how I started the practice? Yeah, of course I am. But and I think I would have ended up here anyways. Yeah, but I have the rest of my life to learn this stuff, and so do you. You have your whole life, and I feel like we don't need to rush. We don't need to. You can focus on learning on herbs and herbalism for a year before you even cast a spell, and you'll still be a witch. Your practice is what you make it. You're allowed to go at any pace that you want. So this is, as you can tell, a couple hours later. The lighting is slightly different. I have a veil on. The vibe, immaculate. It's an immaculate vibe. I actually asked my Twitter as well what my followers felt like were the biggest mistakes they have made in their craft, just to widen the scope a little bit as well. Okay, we got 14 responses. One of which is overthinking it. I was consumed about the protection part. It was not helping my spirituality one bit, but I later realized I was dealing with gods and goddesses here. No tanks or an atomic bomb. Speaking too soon, learning to keep my own counsel longer than I think I ought to, and then longer again than that. Some things belong to me and only me. I gave my patroness a yellow candle and she reacted badly. Not to overthink or overread the craft instead of doing stuff. I agree with that. I used to cast absent-mindedly or while multitasking. I also did that. Trying to talk to my guides without enough protection. Biggest mistake I made. Trying to return negativity to the sender when I first started practicing, thinking it would help me move forward without realizing I was responsible for how I was feeling. Internal work and reflection is so important to me before starting any kind of spell work. Using a pendulum without adequate protection. Not taking the time to unlearn biases I learned through how I was raised and jumped straight from one religion into another without taking the time to check in on myself and unlearn the idea of witchcraft being so sinful and something to hide and be ashamed of. Thinking that I had to do spells or had to do things other witches do to be considered one instead of doing what I felt was right. Letting social media influence me too much, not doing enough research, giving up on some spell or ritual just because it didn't work the first time, getting too hung up on finding the right practices to the point of restricting myself entirely. When I first started casting spells, I wasn't as careful with my wording as I should be. Now I'm careful with my words and make sure the words I use will bring out the exact outcome I want without any sort of mess ups or side effects. Specificity. Let's see what else. Use sigils I found via Pinterest. That is also a mistake I see people making a lot because you don't know that those sigils on Pinterest are written for that and they may not work for you. I always say make your own sigils. 1, being careful with herbs when adding them into another combination. trusting a spirit way, I actually do steps to make sure good news was nice spirit, but that could have been so bad. Be mindful of your thoughts, don't overthink. I think the general consensus is talking about overthinking, and I think that's really interesting because I tend to do a lot more intuitive work and use my intuition a lot more in my practice now than I used to. I used to go very by the book, and now I kind of know what herbs go where, not necessarily by memorizing them, but just the feeling that I'm getting. As well as that, I think a lot of it, the sentiment is that we could have researched more. There's a few more sentiments that I really like. Being careful with herbs too. When you mix herbs, being careful with crystals. These are materials that are really important, and you know, some of them are dangerous when we think like of some poisonous herbs, when we think of some crystals that go in water and then dissolve and become toxic, malachite. I think I put so much pressure on myself when starting my craft to be the perfect witch, and I talked a lot about in my last video the perfect witch and what the perfect witch is and what the perfect witch looks like to me. And I'm getting to the point where I very much am not the perfect witch, and my craft isn't going to look like anyone else's craft. So comparing myself to people I find on the internet or my friends or what my friends do or what my friends are good at is not going to assist me in actually becoming a better practitioner and progressing in my craft because not on my path, because it won't, comparing doesn't do anything. I'm moving my sorrel. And I think that's something too, is like, you don't have to be influenced by these people. You don't have to do exactly what everyone else is doing. I think it's hard with trends because trends take a lot of power, put it in the hands of the people, and it's really easy to do, and it seems like a good idea. Anyways, this was more of a very brief video. I think that editing it'll probably come out to like 15 minutes. It's a little bit shorter. I don't have a witchy favorites video for this month, so we're just gonna hop into March. So March witchy favorites coming soon, and I also have more of my 10 best for beginners series coming out in the upcoming weeks. I'm gonna have a video on sigils and a video on shadow work. That's kind of what's on the curriculum. If there are any other videos you want to see, you want to share the mistakes you've made on your path, let me know. This is an open space. I'd love to see your comments. If you want, you can like, subscribe, turn the bell on, but no pressure. Remember to have a good rest of your day and drink water.